If you're tuning in today and you're feeling maybe a bit lost or hopeless or just deeply questioning what the point of it all is right now, I really want you to know you're not alone. I am genuinely so glad you're here. Today, we're going to walk together through a really deeply human, incredibly powerful framework for understanding our own lives.
Think about this for a second. What actually gives life meaning when everything else is just stripped away? I know it can be a really painful place to be, feeling like you're just going through the motions every single day. But what if, even in our absolute darkest moments, there's this fundamental human drive just waiting to be awakened inside of you? Let's explore exactly where this idea comes from.
Okay, so let's dive into this. The man you're looking at is Dr. Viktor Frankl. He was a real person, a brilliant Viennese psychiatrist and neurologist. Back in October of 1944, he walked through the gates of the Auschwitz concentration camp. And sewn into the lining of his coat was his life's work, a manuscript he had spent years painstakingly writing. But right at the gate, the guards stripped him, they confiscated that coat, and they completely burned his life's work.
Over the course of the war, Frankl endured just unimaginable loss. He lost his pregnant wife, his parents, and his brother to the camps. And yet, amidst all this horrific suffering, when he was finally liberated in 1945, weighing less than 90 pounds, Frankl survived. But he didn't just survive physically. While he was in the camps, he actually began rewriting his manuscript from memory on stolen scraps of paper. He was actively observing what was keeping some people psychologically alive in that environment. Now, before the war, psychology was mostly dominated by Sigmund Freud, who basically argued that humanity is fundamentally driven by the will to pleasure. But Frankl, who was observing human nature in a place where literally all pleasure had been violently eradicated, realized something totally profound. He observed that our primary motivational force isn't pleasure at all, but rather this will to meaning. We don't wake up just wanting pleasure. We wake up wanting purpose.
Frankl actually adopted a core truth from the philosopher Nietzsche, which goes, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." Frankl noticed that physical survival in the camps wasn't just about how physically healthy you were before. Past a certain threshold, survival really relied on having a specific why to stay alive, a real reason to just keep going.
To really understand this, let's look at a tragic but vital story that Frankl recorded. There was a fellow prisoner, a composer, who had a dream that the war would end for him on March 30th. This date gave him hope. It gave him a solid reason to push through the intense agony of February and March. He stayed really buoyant. But when March 30th arrived and liberation didn't come, his hope just vanished. He immediately developed a high fever, became delirious, and died the very next day. When his why disappeared, his body literally gave up.
Now compare that to Frankl's own survival mechanism. Frankl would be marching through the frozen mud in thin shoes, suffering just immense physical pain. But to survive, he would visualize himself standing at a lectern in a warm, well-lit lecture hall after the war, teaching an audience about the psychology of the prisoner. That specific vision of a future task, a future meaning, is what literally kept him on his feet.
So these profound observations in the camps formed the foundation of his psychological lesson. Frankl developed logotherapy, which is often called the Third Viennese School of Psychotherapy. Logos is just Greek for meaning. And unlike traditional therapy that might focus really heavily on excavating your past problems, logotherapy is deeply future-oriented. It focuses entirely on the choices we can make today to discover meaning in our present circumstances. So how do we actually find this meaning? Well, Frankl mapped out 3 practical avenues for us. The first avenue is creation and work. This means doing a deed, producing a work, or taking on a task that serves a cause greater than ourselves. It's essentially what we put out into the world. It's that tangible reason to get out of bed in the morning, to contribute something that only you can contribute.
The second avenue is experiences and love. Because meaning isn't just about producing things, it's also about experiencing life. It's found in taking in goodness, truth, beauty, nature. And most importantly, it's found in the profound sharing of life and love with another human being. It's about what we take in from the world that truly moves our spirit.
And then there's the third avenue, which is perhaps the most profound, especially given Frankl's background, and that's our attitude towards suffering. Look, when we are faced with a completely hopeless situation, a fate we absolutely cannot change, we still have the ability to choose a courageous attitude. Frankl taught that human dignity remains, even in terrible tragedy, because we can turn personal suffering into a genuine triumph of the human spirit. To really wrap our heads around this, Frankl used this beautiful metaphor comparing life to a movie. Every single frame, every individual picture, carries its own meaning. You might be in a really dark scene right now, but it's just one frame.
You can't possibly understand the meaning of the whole film until the final sequence is shown. Every moment of your life, even the very painful ones, carries potential meaning that's building the final picture of who you are.
But what happens when we just can't see that meaning? Well, Frankl diagnosed a very modern problem he called the existential vacuum. When we lack a compelling life purpose, we tend to fall into the state of emptiness, boredom, and anxiety. It's that lingering feeling that life is just sort of hollow, a condition that deeply, deeply plagues our modern, comfortable society today.
So, the really crucial point here is how we try to fill that vacuum. Frankl noted that directly chasing endless pleasure, or strictly chasing career success just for the sake of it, is actually self-defeating. He called the pleasure principle a fun spoiler, because the harder you chase happiness directly, the more it runs away from you. Happiness and fulfillment are actually byproducts of dedicating yourself to a meaningful pursuit. They aren't the target itself. And this brings us to a really beautiful concept: tragic optimism. Now, Frankl wasn't asking us to just be blindly, toxically positive. Not at all. Tragic optimism is the deeply human capacity to take life's negative aspects, things like loneliness, failure, or deep uncertainty, and creatively turn them into something constructive. It's about saying yes to life, in spite of the tragedy.
Now, I want to offer you a practical reflection to take with you. So often, when we're suffering, we ask the universe, what do I expect from life? Frankl says we need to completely flip this question on its head. We need to ask, what is life expecting from me today? It shifts you from being a passive victim of your circumstances to an active participant who has real responsibilities to fulfill.
Try asking yourself, can you find a purpose that serves others? Frankl noted that meaning very often comes from self-transcendence, which really just means getting outside of yourself for the good of someone else, whether it's a family member, a friend, or even a community project. Identifying just one single reason to get out of bed in the morning to serve others can profoundly shift your entire internal compass.
And when things are entirely out of your control, you have to ask, how will you choose to respond? Frankl's ultimate lesson from literally the darkest places on Earth is that humanity's ultimate inner freedom can never, ever be taken away. And that is the ability to choose your attitude in any given set of circumstances. Your response is your ultimate freedom.
If this explainer has resonated with you today, I absolutely cannot recommend the book Man's Search for Meaning enough. It is truly one of the most influential books ever written. It acts as such a profound companion for anyone going through a difficult period, and it really offers a beautiful roadmap out of the dark and into a life fueled by purpose.
Let's leave off with this lingering thought. In some way, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning. I really hope this explainer helps you recognize that you are the author of your own story. Even in the absolute hardest chapters, there's a unique meaning waiting for you to discover it. So I'll leave you with this question to ponder. What is one small thing life is expecting from you today? Keep searching, stay brave, and thank you so much for learning with me today.